back. WNST, Towson, Baltimore, and Baltimore Positive. I positively spent a little time at Fadley's over the weekend. I went and visited with Damie. We are putting together the crab cake tour. It's going to begin at Fadley's. We're going to start there in Costas, and we are coming to a hometown near you, eating crab cakes and drinking beer and probably potato chips and other delectable things. But went to Fadley's, and Damie brought me some fish. I had some red snapper, I had some rockfish hybrids, some porgy, among some other things. And I delivered half of it to Chris Pika, as well as some delicious jumbo lump crab cakes from Fadley's. Chris Pika, how are you? You're having a hell of a weekend here, man. You moved back to Baltimore. The weather's breaking. You've done Oriole games now. You're geared up for your first Ravens draft. You're Mount St. Joe's and singing songs and all the stuff that's going on here. And you got to an Oriole game as a Baltimore resident. I know that meant a lot to you, man.
Well, it did. It was the first time I was back in the park since I think the Monday or the Sunday night game against the Yankees 2 years ago. And just being back in the park and hearing crowd sounds for real as opposed to the canned sounds I've been on TV at MLB and NFL games here over the last year. It was kind of nice to just see people walking around and walking through the shops and sitting in the stands and cheering. You have seats are zip tied off. The Orioles, I think, did a really good job of making sure that the pods of 2 and 4, if you had any hesitancy, we didn't have any walking into the ballpark. We stayed probably 4.5 innings, then the rain sort of picked up and it was time to get out. But just being back there and walking around and seeing the atmosphere again is nice. I mean, it's nice to have that, regardless of what percentage it's going to be now or the remainder of the season.
Is there anything worse in sports than a rain delay?
We never got to the rain delay. I was hoping the umpires were going to do that. I saw Nicole Sherry, the groundskeeper, come out, and I've worked enough baseball to know that if the groundskeeper is walking out to visit with the crew chief, that they're letting them know, hey, something might be coming, and then you keep an eye on the, unfortunately, I've worked in baseball and other sports too long. You almost watch other things rather than the game. You see the grounds crew in their shed in right center field, and if they're not all ganged up in there, they're not going to stop the game anytime
You
soon.
think of it from an operation standpoint because you
right.
just did it too long, literally, right?
Yeah, it's hard not to take your eyes off of stuff like that and not see the little things that people may not realize what goes on in a situation like that. It never rained hard enough for them to stop it, or I think they had to attend to the mound in the later innings. But sitting out there in the rain isn't the best, and it would have been a little easier to take had the Orioles been in the lead at that point. But it wasn't a nice night for Wade LeBlanc, even though the bullpen did a great job after he left.
Well, the whole Moeller contingent over at Catonsville for Kalarick, coming over with the A's and whatnot. So there was a little bit of a homecoming. Yankees in now. The reason I brought you on wasn't even to talk Mount St. Joe or Catholic League or even going back to the Orioles game. You're such a front office guy on the football side with the Saints and the Falcons. You've been on all these meetings. You know how this stuff works. This whole Orlando Brown thing, and I have no information. I'd love to really know, and I'm tea-leaving where it is that he would be dealt. This is a fascinating sports radio debate, a fan debate, but I think it's even more of a fascinating inside poker debate inside of both of these franchises and what they're trying to do and the value of Orlando Brown and him asking out. And is he a right tackle or left tackle? Is Ronnie Stanley healthy enough for you to feel comfortable about dealing him, or you just want to get rid of him? You get an extra year now on a player because you get a 31. I mean, this is a very esoteric deal, and it's not as simple as we like him, we don't like him, we sign him, we don't sign him, he's a right tackle, he's a left tackle. Tons of moving parts. I find this to be a fascinating conversation, and that's why I reached to you to hear your thoughts on it, because I know you're thinking something.
Well, deals like that don't happen in a vacuum. They don't happen in a 2-day period or a 5-day period. These are deals and thoughts and things that go back 1 or 2 years even. You have to talk to your coaching staff. And obviously if Orlando wasn't comfortable at a position and he, let the Ravens coaching staff know that he wasn't comfortable playing at a particular position, he wanted to be back at another place. You talk to maybe the general manager, maybe he or his agent expressed something to them. Those are things that sort of build up over time. And how comfortable you are with the player and how honest the front office is with the player and how honest the player is with the front office. and it was obvious that Orlando wanted to play a different position than where he had been placed. But the Ravens maybe didn't see it that way. But obviously, you always will take phone calls. General managers will always take phone calls, and you always take hypotheticals. You take calls from agents, you take calls from personnel people around the league, and you take a look at where you are on the draft board, especially in this year's draft where the season was so crazy. I mean, you have a GM in the league who said, I think one of the quotes I had read recently, if we have a choice between a player who played the entire season and a player opted out, we're going to take the player who played the entire season and who didn't opt out. So how much of that thinking may be going on in front offices is going to be interesting. Maybe do you load up on draft picks in 22 when things are back to a little bit more normal and players are playing the entire year? Maybe you have a little bit more certainty about what's in the draft class and what you're going to get out of it. There are a lot of those discussions and thoughts, and that's why teams spend that kind of money on their personnel people, because you have to trust that process. But that, like I said, that process doesn't happen in a 2 or 3 day window. Oh, we're going to make a deal and we're going to do this or we're going to do that. This is probably something that the roots of this probably go back 6 months. They probably go back to the end of the season discussions that you and I've always talked about. The most important things that happen in a front office are those exit interviews. And then when the team staff gets together, the coaching staff, scouting staff, personnel staff get together immediately at the end of the season, and they look at their wall board of roster and they say, okay, where do we need to be next year, year after that, in terms of the cap and some other things that they have? Obviously, Lamar's contract is going to play into this, and other contracts, but you have to see where you are and where you want to be. So obviously, the Ravens looked at this in January, late January, and said, we look at this position, we might be able to move on because we have a player who really doesn't want to play this particular spot. So what do we need to do? So you entertain offers. And if the offer isn't the right offer, hey, we got a great player and we'll make it work. And that's what the Ravens have been able to do. In this case,
well, I'm shocked that the Chiefs loved them as much as they did.
That's exactly it. You need a team that wants that player, and that player wants to go there and fits that position need. And the Chiefs have a need on the offensive line. So you look for a trade partner that has interest, and teams know what everybody else's personnel is. Not only do you have your own board of your own team, but you probably have a boards of each of the teams in your division and their rosters, so you know what they're looking for. Part of the draft prep is what are the team's greatest needs going into the draft, and you try to identify each team's greatest needs so that there are no surprises when your team name is on the clock and you've got those 7 minutes or 10 minutes to make that pick. You've already determined what other teams are looking for. So it's an information business. And as I said, those tentacles go out maybe 6 or 7 months. And the Ravens found a trade partner and got pretty good value back for Orlando. We'll see how the trade goes. And hopefully for both teams, it works well. It's not, oh, this player was great for us, but he sucks now. Now he's going to the Chiefs. He's still a great player. He's going to be a great player for the Chiefs at a position that he wants to play. So he gets something out of it. The Ravens get picks out of it, which they want and need, and may be able to bargain for other things. And we'll see what Eric DeCosta and his group have to do with once the draft begins.
Well, the original word out of Kansas City is that Zeus is going to have to sing for his supper, right? So he's going to have to go play and show he's a left tackle in order to get left tackle money, and they would be a team that would want to give it to him based on Patrick Mahomes. So there's an earn it in it for him too.
Right. There is an earn in it for him, and I think that the Chiefs have also been a smart organization the last couple of years, and obviously they got a Super Bowl trophy to show for it. But they know what the player's contract status is, and they basically said, listen, we're not going to make any promises, but if you come in and you help us out and you perform well at the position, and we think you're a long-term answer, you'll get a contract commensurate with what you've been able to perform and do for us and what we think you're going to do going forward. So there is a little bit of risk in the player involved, but it'll be in a new environment. He'll be able to impress new people and maybe put himself in a position where he'll get the money that he's looking for at the position he wants to play.
Chris Pika is our guest. He is Blog and Tackle. He is back from touring all through the South where they had delicious food and having crab cakes here and seafood now freshly in Baltimore and serving up here in South Baltimore and doing his thing. So from a draft perspective and what the league wants out of draft weekend and the big show and the Cleveland and putting the city together and all that, I start to think that we're almost 5, 6, 7 years into this circuit here, will we ever get this sort of an event? This has become an event that has been toned down a little bit from where it was in Philadelphia, Nashville, some other places. But um, I see this as this is a Super Bowl weekend for the league. And given where we are and given that the Orioles aren't very good, this is a big weekend here for sports. I mean, I've noticed all efforts are ahead for Thursday. I think everybody will be tuning in. I think the Ravens have turned up the heat a little bit for the draft with this. If you like the draft, if you like the team, you'll be paying attention this weekend.
Well, the NFL has turned this into, what was basically a mundane event in the 60s and 70s, really, into most of the 80s was a mundane event. It was done over the phone for
It
a
was
lot of
mundane
years.
until Tobin and Kuiper were yelling at each other.
Right, exactly. And people started paying attention. So I think it's packaged incredibly well. You see what both ESPN and NFL Network have done with the draft. ABC takes a different tack. They're going to concentrate more on the college stories of these players, having seen them and having done college football on TV and where these guys are coming from and maybe where they'll fit. So you have sort of different looks at the way that the draft goes, and that's great for NFL fans, and that's certainly great for the NFL, who wants to dominate the sporting calendar every month. And the fact that they'll dominate an area that normally belongs to baseball and even almost the playoff basketballs that's getting ready to start again in its normal slots, and hockey is a testament to the 800-pound gorilla that the NFL is year round. That, hey, we're going to make an event out of this. We're going to bring, in the case of Nashville before the pandemic, several thousand people into downtown to celebrate these guys being picked, walking across the stage, hugging the commissioner, and going off. And the entire weekend is built that way. The first night's is sort of the celebration party, and then the last 2 days is more for the hardcore draft people. They're looking for these guys in the third, fourth, and sixth rounds and being able to cheer on their team. And the NFL brings in all these people to make the picks. I think Baltimore will remember Mo Gaba doing the picks downtown. That was a great moment. And so the NFL are looking for moments like that to sort of celebrate first responders and healthcare workers and the like, and former players. An old friend of mine, Merton Hanks, made a great crack about the Cowboys. Said we were the first team to 5 Super Bowl rings, and they all boo them, and it's fun, and that's what the NFL wants. They want an event out of something that's basically you're writing a guy's name down on a card, handing it in, to the personnel staff. So. But we watch, and that's the beauty of it, and that's what the NFL enjoys.
Well, cameras everywhere now too, which makes it even more enjoyable. I hope we get some cocoa with Roger Goodell on Thursday night. Chris Pika joining us here, Blog and Tackle, and man about Baltimore now, and getting ready for all this stuff here as we go into springtime. Any observations on going to the Orioles game in regard to the game, the pace, the parts of it that I think all of us who've loved baseball. And again, I was involved in this rock and roll auction on Saturday, Chris. So most of the day I was watching old Mickey Mantle cards and Pete Rose cards and George Brett cards and baseball memorabilia. I was thinking a lot about baseball over the weekend, and I've talked to more people. The weather's good this week. Jen and I talked about, maybe go see the Yankees play this week or go over there. I'm watching it on TV. I'm trying to get, become part of the conversation of all of it. But part of the conversation is actually going to a game and what you get when you go.
Well, I think what you have to understand is, the atmosphere with a max of 10,000 people is certainly not what it's like when the place is completely full. I mean, I wasn't there at opening day. I wanted to be, but obviously that crowd can only make so much amount of noise. So it's better than, like I said, the can noise. Certainly,
I've been in a lot of ballparks with 10,000 people when it's fun.
Right.
I mean, you know what I mean?
Like, so right, but you don't have people around you. The way they've done the pod system is, we were sitting in the upper deck almost to the left of home plate, and we're in row 2. So there are people maybe 2 rows behind us, maybe half a row away from us.
Oh, you can see it. I mean, it reminds me of when I went to the football game in Philly, and it looked like it wasn't fun. Remember, the first time people were in the stadium last year was Ravens Eagles, and I'm like, it's a different experience. Same thing with concerts and distancing, and we've talked about driving concerts and stuff like that. It's just, this is all going to be different from that perspective. But going and having that experience of being in a ball game seems to me, unlike I went golfing last week, right? That was almost normal. Like once you get out on the course. I would think an Oriole game, if you're there and you got a drink and a hot dog and you've been going your whole life, it would be fun. It would be something you'd want to do on a 75-degree night.
Yeah, I think it is. It's still a wonderful night and a great ballpark. I mean, not all the concession stands are open, but you can mobile order from your seat. If you're trying to go to the team store, which is only open on game days because of the way the stadium is set up, you don't go early when the gates first open. You maybe wait and go like we did after the bottom of the fifth on our way out. We stopped in there on the way out. The concession stands are set up with 6 feet of distance. They don't want you eating in the concourses. The ushers hold a very polite sign saying, "Please wear your mask," and they kind of walk down to the bottom of the rows and just kind of show it and just remind
your mask up during the game, no matter that. Yes. That's a rule. Okay.
Yes. Yeah. And it's very gentle. Obviously, there's a lot of PA announcements, a lot of video board announcements asking you to do the same thing.
Now, I'm not being a jerk, but this is how I feel. I wouldn't want to go over there and sit in the upper deck with a mask on outside. The reason I would want to be outside would be to not, you know what I mean? Like, to some degree, I have been seeking things, and I'm not an anti-masker in any way, but I am seeking experiences, sadly, away from people, right? Like I'm seeking to be, and I'm still a couple weeks away from a second shot, but that's a little bit of that would be something I would think about. Do I want to wear a mask for 4 hours at a ball game Wednesday night when I could sit at home watch it? That would be something for me that I would understand it in the press box if I'm the Ravens. I mean, I get it differently, but I think paying for it and doing it, I'd rather be somewhere without a mask outside. That's my
I guess it didn't bother. I mean, we grabbed Boog's Barbecue. We sat up there. We ate. We had our mask off during that period of time. When we were walking in the concourse, we kind of lowered the masks if we weren't around. If it wasn't around anybody, like on our way.
Well, I'm the first guy. If I'm near you, my mask is on.
Right.
Like I'm seeking a place where I can be unmasked, to not be near people, not to be near people in Fells Point without a mask. No, I'm not looking at that. Yeah.
Right.
I'm looking at it differently, but I also get that the team has to have everybody mask, and that's part of the rule. And that's something that I wanted to ask you about because you experienced it. That's all.
Yeah, I know. It wasn't weird to me. It was fine. And as a matter of fact, it was a little chilly outside. I didn't mind them having the mask on, and actually made my face a little warmer.
It's been like that in the car all winter, right? We get out on the road. My wife's like, "Dude, you can take the mask off now." Like, it's keeping me warm. I'm good, man.
Yeah, I mean that actually was a plus. I mean, the weirdest thing was, and I applaud the Orioles for doing this. They had a setup where you could get COVID testing just outside the stadium. It was on the first base side, on the lower concourse outside behind where some of the concession stands, the freestanding concession stands, are near the kids area. So they were out there if anyone wanted to get COVID tested, although I do understand that sort of mixed messaging because you want people to come and be at a ballpark with crowds, but yet you would have an opportunity to test for COVID there, but it was being offered free. So that was a little bit different. But I mean, the experience of walking into a ballpark, getting your phone scanned for your ticket, no more paper tickets anymore. I know you sold a few tickets. Those days of paper tickets are dead now. It's a different experience anyway. But just to be able to walk in and smell the food, and you hear everything in the ballpark. You hear the umpires, you hear foul balls, you hear the crack of the bat a lot more, than maybe you do in a full house. You get a real sense of what's going on out in the field. Sometimes you can hear the dugouts chirping at the umpires a little bit more than you would if 25,000 were in there. So
horseshit.
Exactly. You get guys giving the umpire grief from the upper deck. Maybe not me. And I've been to enough games, and this. I've been in press boxes all my life. I have a hard time cheering. Because I have to go back to being a fan again. It's hard to do it when you've been in operations and media operations, and you're sitting in a press box and you're told never to cheer, and you're just kind of watching the game dispassionately. But after a couple innings, you get into a little bit. Remember
something why magic happens.
Yeah, you understand why you're there and why you're rooting.
All right, man. I'll go to a game with you. Nobody wants to go to a game with me. It feels like it might not be fun to go to a baseball game with me. So I don't know. I will wait for my second shot, and I will live vicariously through you, Pika. How about that?
Thank you very much.
The draft is this week, and Chris Pika will be blogging and tackling out on Twitter at BlogAndTackle, opining as he usually does about the inner workings of things behind the scenes with sports. That is kind of what you do, right?
Yeah,
That's why I bring you
I'm
on.
I'm incredibly interested about, because I've worked in some of those scenarios. I'm incredibly interested in how teams handle certain things from a PR standpoint, from a social standpoint, uh, and how some of those things come together. I mean, there's been some great campaigns by the teams in recent weeks.
That's
The
it.
NFL
Chris
teams.
Pika knows how the sausage is made. That's what I'm going to start saying. How about that?
You know,
And it is sausage.
it is sausage, and people, and anyone
Specifically
who,
over here.
right,
Sometimes over
exactly.
here
You
it's
got to
prime
understand,
rib.
right, right. If you know how the sausage is made at those levels and in those buildings on a daily basis, and you listen, they're all. I hate to say they're not nameless and faceless because all of them work very, very hard in the front offices. Okay, and they don't make a lot of money. They're not the premium. They're not the Eric DeCostas of the world. Whether you're selling tickets, whether
This is
you're
where I
doing
start
social.
plugging, especially the Baker Compliments and the Roy Summerhoffs, and I start
Right,
naming
and
everything.
but you're somebody who's selling group tickets, or you're somebody who's the social media manager, or you're the number three person of the intern in the PR department, and you're busting your tail all year long for your club. It's interesting to me to see how a lot of that is, and what you see publicly or what's presented to you publicly is the result of a lot of people's work.
Chris Pike is here, blog and tackle. All of our WNST coverage. You get ready for the draft. Royal Farms, real fresh, real fast. Make sure you're grabbing that fried chicken. It's going to be delicious. And the Western fries keep you working all week. And you get nachos there too, and get a little coffee for the road. Pick up a salad. I do all that at Royal Farms. I'm really into the tenders lately, so make sure you're checking those out. All right, I am Nestor. We are WNST.net. We are monitoring all things draft. Luke is on it. We are on it. We are BaltimorePositive.com.